don't want to adjust the hair.
Yeah, man. Oh, well, everybody, welcome to the Big Dave Show. The man that's going to take up most of your screen. It makes me look very small over here.
Oh, man, you'll be all right, buddy.
Big Dave, I really appreciate you coming through.
Oh, mate, it was an absolute pleasure, mate. And I'm actually saw that you've been interviewing a couple of colleagues of mine, Alexis. Was it Richie Hardcore?
Yeah.
And there's a few others out there that I know that I've sort of run in the same sort of circles with. Yeah. So it's really cool.
Tell us about what you do. Let the people know, because I mean, you do some very amazing, important, and interesting work.
Yeah. Well, for the last 30 years, mate, I've been working in high performance and the mental performance coach. So basically, I help clients become the best version of themselves. You know, working through limiting beliefs, looking at ways to maximize the performance, make more, changing habits, and building more consistency in their performance.
Nice. Would you like to name drop some?
I could name a few. So one that I know some of your viewers will probably know is Israel Adesanya. I've worked with Lydia Ko. I've also had a young lady, Tupou, who is a gold medalist at the Olympics. I've recently had, look, when it comes to trying to run off all the names, you got to appreciate over 30 years, I have helped to create a multitude of world champions, Olympic gold medalists, world champions, national champions. It's huge amount of numbers. You know, there's quite a few, mate.
That's cool, man. 30 years is a long time. How old are you? You don't
I'm 23,
old.
so yeah, it's skincare. But you know, I'm 53 now, mate.
Yeah, wow.
So the whole journey for me started. You know, I left school at. I just turned 16. Left school. I hated it. I'm dyslexic, but I didn't realise and find that out until I was in my 20s. And I didn't really have a focus on who I was and where I was going. I was just happy to get the hell out of school. Got an apprenticeship as a printer, so I am also a highly qualified reel-fed offset printer, which I absolutely fucking hated with a passion. But, you know, it paid the bills, you know. As a young man, at least I was out of the home, having my own life and having a good time. You know, I lived in some pretty rough little areas, you know. Welcome to everyone from Clendon, Manurewa, because that's where I was staying for a long period of time.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a bit of a South Auckland boy, you know, played rugby. And then through the whole process I started getting into strongman, and in that journey I kind of found out that it was predominantly mental, and I had a vision to be the strongest man in the country. I wasn't prepared to make some of those decisions about what you want to jab in your ass, so I had to find an alternative, and interestingly enough, I sort of backed into hypnosis and used it for myself, and then expanded off that and investigated into things like neurolinguistics. And then about 1995, I started getting interested in doing this as a career, 95, 96, so I started studying. And on that journey, I've met some pretty amazing mentors and gentlemen and ladies that sort of helped develop me. And then eventually I had this dream of creating my own business and having freedom. And so I've been operating out of my little garage for those almost 30 years. It's something like 30 years. I've lost count, mate. So from a little garage in Waterview, we've created some pretty amazing results.
I've seen your garage though. Like you posted a picture the other day. I'm like,
I'm really proud of it.
Badass looking.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. I've got to say, and a big shout out to Yvonne, who I've been coaching this lady's daughter, and generally I've been working with the dad. And this instance, the mum came in and she's fluffing my pillows in the old office, and going, what the hell's going on? She goes, I'm an interior designer, I just can't help myself. I like to see things nice. And I went, because I'm looking for a change. Because originally I had my gym in there. I mean, I've had some massive personal bests of some of the strongest guys in the country. I mean, I used to, doing New Zealand's Strongest Man, I had some of the boys come over for training in my garage, I think I've had a 260 bench with a guy called Daniel Holiday. 260 or maybe 240 or something like that. I mean, it's just, even that's amazing. I was looking for a change. Obviously, the garage got a bit tired and beaten up over the time, and then Yvonne said, well, how do you feel if we do a bit of a swap? I'll design your office, and you look after my daughter. And on that instance, I said, well, I've got a rough idea of what I want. And she said, well, let me show you what I'm envision. And she took a picture out, and I went, that's exactly, I wanted that sort of Chicago smoking room, professor's office sort of thing,
Yeah.
And she went and created it, mate. And I just absolutely, I've always loved working out of my little office. But I've got to say, they actually say that one of the biggest influences of behaviour is your environment. So when you create an environment, it's inspiring. I wanted people to come in there and get a real sense of something that was pretty special. There's a few people that said, it's very masculine. But in 30 years, I've never had anyone go, it's a little bit too masculine for me. So, people love coming there, and that's really important, mate.
Yeah, no, it looks really cool. I quite like that design as well. I like how you put it to the Chicago.
Yeah.
I really feel
like you're pulling out the cigar and
Yeah, those like old school movie type environments.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. In terms of how you got to the point where you actually got qualified, because I know you've got quite a story to tell there as well. You've I've been to one of your seminars. I've heard a bit of it. Tell us a bit about that, because it wasn't exactly very straightforward from what I understand. There was a lot of people doubting.
Oh, mate, what you got to appreciate is, I came from an environment, and I still to this day remember walking up the corridor. Now I'm in steel cap boots, overalls. I've got a bald head. I pull trucks. I do a little bit of bouncing on the weekends to make extra money. And so they just saw me as this big guy, big dumb guy who works on the press, And I remember one of the managers caught me in the hallway, and he goes, Dave, what's this bullshit about you doing this psychology stuff? Mate, you only just managed to pass your apprenticeship. And he was right. I'd only just managed to pass my apprenticeship. And that really fucking pissed me off. But I use that as fuel because, I really did struggle. I'm being dyslexic. So that journey, I had to learn how to read and write again. Not that I wasn't reading and writing before that, but let's just say I needed to fine-tune it somewhat. And you've also got to appreciate that for me, academia was very intimidating. Struggling through school, I didn't pass anything. I've got no qualifications from school. So on that journey, getting into neurolinguistics, and where I started was with a man who ironically lived across the street from us. His name was Clive Litton, and he was a therapist. and coach. And you've got to appreciate these are the early days of, in those days it was life coaching. These are the very early days of, most of us will probably get mentoring and whatnot from, seniors or parents or whatever, but we didn't really have much out there. And he was sort of putting together some level of certification of what he had learned through many years of therapy, psychology and training, and he was an ex-priest as well. So I started with him, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and I knew that this was something that I was destined to do. I'm good at this, And I think one of the keys to being really good at it is that I'm congruent with it. I don't tell people how to suck eggs when I haven't been through some of those things themselves, which is partly why I think I've been incredibly successful, is because I have an understanding, but I can still leverage that in a way that I hold people to account and being honest with them. I have all my clients will tell you, one of the first questions I ask when you come and see me is, do you give me permission to be blunt and honest? Because I'm not here to blow smoke up your ass, where it's about performance now. So I did a number of courses, and I've continued on that theme of educating myself. In fact, it was a wonderful guy called Jim Rohn who was a big influence for me. Unfortunately, Jim's passed away. But I went to Vegas and ran a seminar. I was involved in the teaching process, a speaking process over there, and the guest speaker that night was Jim Rohn, who was my idol. And to this day, I reckon, and it was interesting, I was talking about it this morning. We were sitting down for dinner in the Stardust Hotel, which is no longer there now. It was the last hotel to be pulled down. And there was a hand on my shoulder as I was eating with my wife, and I looked up and it was Jim Rohn. And he said, I was really impressed with you, young man. You spoke well. You've got a bright future. Now, it just goes to show, isn't it powerful how someone like that gives you that affirmation when majority of people are saying the complete opposite. And that was really powerful for me. And I guess to my own credit, to a certain point, is the fact that I'm a stubborn prick. So the boys used to call me Staffy. So when I sink my teeth into something, I wouldn't let go, mate. So I was fucking determined to make this a career, and I had to deal with a lot of shit in the sense that I would constantly get frustrated because demonstrating that in written form and exams and whatnot, again, going back to academia was bloody intimidating. But I had to take responsibility. I showed up and I learned, and I did very well. I actually learned how to learn. And because I was so damn determined and passionate, I got stuck in. And part of that was, when I transitioned, I got a job from a printing press onto a sales job, and I nailed the sales quota. And another little story where I nailed over $1.2 million worth of sales, and I had a budget of $740, so I doubled it. I mean, I'm kicking ass, and it's 6 months into the year. And I just how management handled that, and I was sort of like, well, fuck you. So I basically spent 6 months predominantly reading books. Through that period of time, I was eating up, 3, 4, 5 books a week for 6 months. That was a massive turn for me. For the first time in my life, I was not afraid of learning. I wanted to learn. That in turn, the ultimate challenge for me is here I am now. I'm doing a degree in philosophy, which is very challenging. I still have a lot of work to do in essay writing and referencing and whatnot. But I'm really enjoying learning, and I think the other key thing is, as a coach, I have a responsibility to be congruent with what I talk about. I encourage everyone to be constantly building their best version of themselves. And I think that's a personal responsibility to each and everyone, because we've been given the gift of life. We're here. Don't flaunt it. Get busy, and really, hold on to that ideal of being the best version of yourself. So, in some ways, I've sort of nailed it physically. Being New Zealand's strongest man competitor, and now here I am working on it in a mental sense, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, it's quite a contrasting thing,
Yeah.
and I think this is where a lot of people kind of develop these stereotypes around, if you're the physical type, you're probably not the brain type, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
to nail both of that and
Yeah.
prove them otherwise is, it's one hell of an achievement.
Yeah, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And I think that you get a lot of satisfaction about recognizing that and then developing those weaknesses. Don't let it sort of hold you back. We create these belief systems which are sometimes bullshit. For me, I was very good at convincing myself, well, it's hard for me because I'm dyslexic. Well, that's too easy an excuse. Or I'm not smart enough to do that. Well, if you continue to believe that, then that's going to be your reality. But fuck, come on, man. Let's just challenge. Learn how to learn first. So I actually went to a lady who gave me some tips on how to organise my thoughts on paper, and did some English. I actually went in writing class in English. I still suck at it to a certain point, but I am certainly, I'm grateful for Grammarly. Those of you who don't know what that is, it's best software out there. But I'm enjoying the process, and I love the idea of challenging myself.
Tell us about your achievements as a strongman.
Yeah. So I would. What stimulated initially was, I was playing rugby, and I remember I got called up to go into a camp. And then we were there with some of the senior boys, and I realised that, here I am, I'm 19, 20, and these guys are 26, 27, 28, guys that I looked up to. But I'm looking at what they're doing in the gym, and I'm going, fuck, man, I'm kicking their ass, And so in that moment, I kind of thought, well, fuck rugby. Although I love it, shit, man, I'm good at this. We all sort of levitate towards what we do well with. And I got fascinated with it. And ironically, it was a guy that I used to work with when I was printing. His brother, a guy called Steve Barry, was doing Holland Games. He was the current Holland Games champion. And he introduced me. And Steve and I became good friends, and we trained for many years. And then I competed in Highland Games, which was a sort of stepping stone into strongman. I'd done a few smaller events for the gym and a few other small regional things, and did really well in a few of them. But I met some pretty amazing guys, Pody Raketi Stones, Matt Rossiter, Lon Tohu, Nick McNamee, the McNamee brothers, who are freaks, and we're at that point where we were all sort of like this family and group of like-minded guys, working out of the old Gold's Gym, Simon Street, and that was fucking inspiring place to go. If you couldn't bench 200, you're not welcome. It was like pretty amazing place.
Yeah.
There was the best of the best in New Zealand. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I love strongman. But you get to a point where in life, things change. I had a family. I had a beautiful daughter born, Madison, and the lady who dropped me off today. Then I had Mitchell, my son, and in order to perform at that level, and virtually in most situations, you kind of have to be a little bit selfish, because it does take a lot of focus. And I wanted to be present as a dad. I still trained, but the other thing is I was also wanting to build this business, and the first probably 5 years of the business, you can appreciate, like I said, life coaching wasn't a thing. And I really struggled financially. It was tough to build it. I think the key reason why I became a success, apart from the bloody tenacious resolve that I had to make it work, was the support of my wife. I mean, she's been probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, so she supported me even when and there were moments when, I'm my mental performance coach and I'm fucking doubting myself too and getting pissed off, angry, frustrated, starting to doubt, have I made the right decision here? Because I'm compromising, my responsibilities as a dad, and part of that is, to provide financially as well. So it was challenging, man, but, you've got to persevere through that. And what I knew more than anything was I wanted a life. And, here I am now. I've been working roughly a 16-hour week for 30 years.
Nice. I have a question for you. I mean, seeing as you mentioned that, the first 5 years you struggled, and, it's something that a lot of people can relate to. Starting any business is always difficult. Is there anything that you would kind of, any advice you would share with people as to how to approach this? Because I think that's one of the biggest mental challenges,
Yeah, it is.
Getting into a business and kind of going through these motions where you're investing a lot of yourself and not seeing any return, and you're just constantly doubting, why the fuck am I doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, ideally, to a certain point, I think it's about the art of strategy. And we weren't deluded about the challenges financially. One of the things we joke about, my wife and I, is that we had a list of excuses. And we had a list of excuses and reasons why we couldn't go out. So you got your friends going, hey, we're going out, and we're going, oh, we can't because, we had to keep it really tight. And interesting, I talk about that period of time. One of the keys getting through it, first and foremost, is that you must have a clear vision that really, really excites you. Then you have to back that up with a tenacious resolve. You go until you've achieved it, not to the first hurdle and quit. And that runs throughout life, right? But I think the other thing too is having a support network around you. I had and have I have a lot of acquaintances, but I only have a very small group of friends. And in fact, it's two of those boys in particular, Darren and Brownie, who are two of my best mates. Darren Blank from Taupo Top 10, and Darren Orchard, who he heads up New Zealand Maori Soccer. He's associated with it, and an amazing athlete in his own right. But I'm sitting in my garage talking about this vision. And one of the things when I first started, the boys were going, I was going, fuck, I'll have to get an office. Fuck, that's more expensive, blah, blah, blah. And the boys are sitting in the kitchen going, fuck off, Niethe. Look at your garage. It's full of shit. Fuck, clean it out. We'll come and line it all for you. So, mate, the boys actually built that for me. My two best mates went in there. And I remember starting, and I had a desk from my father-in-law, a chair that I managed to, an old office chair, a shitty old couch, and even had concrete on the floor. And when I first started, that was it. Nothing fucking fancy, right? But it's humble beginnings, you know what I mean? But I joke about that was when we talk about support network, I was sponsored. And I crack up about it because my wife says we were sponsored by Waddies, because Joe's mum and dad used to bring food bags, and in it was Waddies baked beans with the sausage. I used to get fucking excited about protein. But we were really seriously, I tell the story of having to go into, my daughter was just born, and we had to go into a piggyback to get money out to pay for formula. We didn't have any, we barely making ends meet. So you have to be strategic in the sense that you keep your cost to a minimum. We kept it very humble. And ironically, years and years of doing that, it's funny. It's still to this day when I go to leave, if I'm off to the gym, I'll say to my wife, okay, if I get a coffee, like $5 is not an issue, and that, but it's still sort of in that wiring, I crack up, yes, you're fine, sweetheart, but there's something really also very exciting about that, because, pain means new life, man, and I worked through all those frustrations, and I think that in of itself possibly helped me become a better coach because of it, because I wanted it so bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense. I didn't actually realize where you came from in that sense. I didn't know that you kind of had to go through so many difficulties to get to where you are. It
wasn't an easy road. But, in all honesty, my story could be mirrored for anyone. Athletes go through frustration. They go through COVID. They go through injury. You know what I mean? Everyone goes through this. Ultimately, when you're clear on what you want and you hold fast in your convictions to making that a reality, you will fucking find a way to work your way through those damn problems. And, to a certain point, it builds that inner strength. I am one fucking determined motherfucker, and here I am now. Like I said, when you think about all the things that scare you, to me, the biggest challenge I am now undertaking, and I'm ready to undertake it. It's taken me 30 years, but doing this degree in philosophy, I think for me is the biggest challenge I've ever undertaken. It fucking scares the fuck out of me. But at the same time, I'm so excited to get in my office and do the work.
At the same time as well, do you kind of feel like, you've been through so much, you've taken that pain, that frustration, that difficulty, that at a certain point you're just like, well, fuck, I've handled so much, like, this ain't really shit. Like, yeah, it's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, but
you get conditioned to it.
Just before,
yeah, absolutely. Like I said, pain means new life. And I think one of the key things is that you've got to learn to reframe everything to serve you. We're very quick to go, and get in this victim mentality. It's hard. Well, fuck you. You serious? Really? All I know is that anything that's ever achieved of any significance has started with a fucking clear vision, and it's been unrealistic. And here I am, you go back to what was reflected in that corridor where the evidence there, here's a guy who failed School C, got no qualifications, barely managed to pass his apprenticeship, and he's got this dream of going into the psychological realm, academia, and coaching and consulting. You're fucking deluded. And he was probably right. And what I love is the fact that when people think that, I actually, instead of getting upset with them or disappointed, I say that, fuck, that excites me, especially when you don't think that I can do it. That fucking excites, fuck you, I'm going to prove something, But, I'm doing it fundamentally because this is what I want, and this is what I'm good at, and this is my vision.
No, that's amazing, man. I can relate to the whole, just kind of going against the odds. I've had a similar thing happen to me when I tried to get into tertiary education as well, because I failed my NCEA as well. And when I showed up, they said, we think you're going to have some trouble with the academia aspect. And I flat out got rejected from one of the universities. I went to another one, and they kind of just gave me a shot with it. And ironically enough, it was in my first year, I was like on the honor roll.
What?
And
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I felt really good about that too.
You should be too.
Shame on you, motherfuckers. You thought,
Mate,
I never had that.
And what does it do for your soul? What does it do for you? It makes you feel good, eh? Do you know what I mean?
It makes you, it definitely makes you think that you can do anything you put your mind to.
Yeah.
If you want it bad enough, you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, like after that, I've actually done a lot. Like I thought that I'd struggle to get a bachelor's degree in something, but I've actually got through it like with relative comfort, and then I've even decided to go and do some postgraduate study, and
wow,
like in
envious of you, brother. Fucking high fucking five, bro.
Thank you.
So I think the learning here is, a belief system fundamentally is something I hope is true. Now, when you think about that, a lot of us are programmed through evidence, and with that we attach belief, right? So you're not very smart. That's what's constantly going through your mind. That's the feedback that you get. And then you start to buy into that bullshit. And so, I want to encourage every listener to say, hey, what are some of these belief systems that don't serve me? You have to go to a place where you become really honest and self-aware. Because there's something really beautiful there when you acknowledge that and conquer it. That's fucking the most incredible fucking feeling on the planet. I like to pride myself as a bit of a hard bastard, right? But ironically, I remember having one of my first essays, and I had someone give me some feedback, and it was unreadable, and I'm going, fuck. And those old feelings started resurging again. And I thought, no, okay, I'll work my way through this, because I'm not going to listen to that narrative, because that doesn't serve me. I'm going to see it for what it is, and it's honest feedback, and I appreciate that. I've got to take responsibility. Let's do some work on this. And I got my mark back. Now, let's face it, now here's a guy who never ever got more than a C, or generally it was a F for fuck off, I got a B+ on an essay. Now, I'm going to tell you something, mate. It's a little embarrassing, but I'm in my garage, in my office. It's one evening. The email comes through that your paper's been marked. You know what it's like. Your paper's been marked. Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm really anxious, because this is my first real essay that I've written. And I'm shitting myself, mate. Click on it, and then I look at the mark. And that was the first time I've cried in a long time. I was it was crying with a little bit of relief, but also a real sense of satisfaction, knowing, you know what, there's the proof. You've done it. Now you've got to improve on that. So my next goal is to get an A. There's people out there going, oh yeah, I get A's all the time. I'm going, fuck me. But that's my next goal. I want to fine tune and seek that, because I want to constantly keep pushing those limits. But that's the buzz. Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
And a postgraduate, are you looking at doing a postgraduate master's sort of degree, or what?
Well, not for the time being, because I've kind of,
taken a break.
I'm where I want to be in terms of that as well.
Yeah.
I have my own opinions about education as well. I think it'll probably apply more so to what I do than you, because I mean, like in the area around business and marketing and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of bullshit. Yeah, there definitely is, because you go out into the real world and you realize just how much of it is, is a certain narrative that that the system kind of tries to push, the ideal world that they would like you to live in, but it just doesn't work that way.
And I think maybe that's part of my advantage with my coaching. I wasn't a very intellectual who never really went through fear and experiences and whatnot. I was a guy who had to go through the school of hard knocks, and I think sometimes that's the connection that I have with a lot of athletes, is that empathy. I know what it's like to be in pain. I know what it's like to doubt yourself. I know what it's like to shit yourself, and being scared, and to doubt. But I think that's sometimes why I think I've really enjoyed working interestingly, with athletes, but it's really also now moved into corporates. It's interesting. Like I said, I had a client come today who flew all the way from Singapore to have a session with me, a very successful businessman. And I have a few entrepreneurs that I work with that in itself is fascinating. It's really cool, man.
Well, because, the world of business, especially I feel like, in the current economic climate, how it is globally, it's, it's a lot more, I feel like, if you're to succeed, if you're really to try and make it in something, you do have to kind of push yourself into an uncomfortable zone.
And feel comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Exactly, yes. I mean, in a lot of ways, I can see how, the mental stress would be similar to that of a, high-performance athlete.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot is on the line.
You're responsible for people.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's not just kind of, you're gambling with a bit of money. The stakes are quite high.
Yeah, they are.
And, the fear of failure, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to be ruined. My employees are going to be ruined. This is not going to be good. So, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and it's like, it's that process of decision making and ensuring that, have I made the right decision? And more importantly, if I'm going to make a decision, how do I get myself in the right state to ensure that the probability of the decision that I make is the ideal decision? So there's multiple layers to it, It fascinates me. And what I love about that is the variety. So, the morning session could be with a golfer. The next session could be with a corporate. In the afternoon, it could be an MMA fighter. I mean, who knows? And I love the variety and the challenge of the variety because it challenges me to think. You get these layers of requirement. Working with a young kid is a little bit different as to working with a 42-year-old executive who's looking at gathering some venture capital to go into a big venture or whatever. But I love that. There are some fundamentals underlying that into certain areas, but I'm always challenged in the job.
In terms of working with, you mentioned you obviously do some work with young people as well.
Yeah.
Do you get many young people that just feel a bit lost in terms of what they're doing?
What you have to appreciate is where I sit in the spectrum, right? So if we look at the spectrum in the sense of functional all the way to high performance, I sit at the very end of that spectrum generally. So those that come and see me fundamentally are generally passionate, excited, hardworking. They've already got certain attributes. Having said that, there's a lot of fine tuning, obviously, but generally, I don't have kids coming in here going, I don't know what I'm going to do, because that's not the clientele that I attract.
Yeah. No, I mean, what I mean in terms of being lost, like not in terms of what am I doing with life, but in terms of like, okay, I've hit a certain point, but where to from here? I might be considered a high performance athlete, for example, but then where do I go from here? How do I become? You could be. You could be a great MMA fighter. You could be
for sure.
a New Zealand champion, but how do I become the world champion? How do I become that
and
that
step
guy?
that up? And there's a number of different factors that contribute to that. And put it to you this way: if we use perhaps someone like Kai, and I'm really excited about this guy. Actually, Kai, Brad, Carlos, all these USC boys have, they've got a great future ahead of them. And I like to think that all the fighters in this country, we're producing some good quality fighters here. You've got City Kickboxing, you've got Peach Boxing, and a number of other gyms around the country that are producing good quality. I mean, I think we're sort of realising now that, we Kiwis can fucking fly, mate. We can take on anyone.
And we don't necessarily need to go anywhere to do it either. It looks like we can actually produce.
We can produce it here. We don't need to go overseas.
Yeah.
And you think of Kai, when he first started, and I won't go into detail because, he probably won't appreciate that. But, he's gone from a guy who was happy to participate in UFC to now believing he can dominate in the UFC.
I gotta say actually about Kai, because I'm a big UFC fan, and I've been following Kai since for a while actually, even before UFC. But the way he's become in these last few fights, I mean that I think in itself, he's gone from a scrapper to just an absolute chess player in there.
And I think part of that is maturing.
Yeah.
And maturing not in the sense that he's young, but maturing in the sense that he's got more and more time under tension. He's got more experience. A massive contributing factor to that is a guy called Dave Wood, who does a lot of breath work. He's working out of Piha, and Dave and I work together, and I work together with a lot of the coaches. I'm sort of like that guy that they go to if they're struggling a little bit. Sometimes I get them at the 10th hour and have to do a little prep talk to get them fucking right, but predominantly I like to see them on an ongoing basis to start building strong habitual behaviours and attitudes and belief systems that serve them. So, ultimately my job is to make myself redundant. If I have to see you for, long periods of time over many, many years, I'll probably question whether or not I've done a good job. Having said that, I have clients that I work with and they disappear. And then 3 years later, they come back for a little bit of warrant of fitness. It's just fucking great. And what's interesting for me, here I am now, I just turned 27. And I'm coaching the children of my clients that I originally started with. I mean, that's for me is such a compliment. It's really, really cool knowing that, the most important and precious thing you can possibly have is your kids, and trusting them with me. It's pretty special, mate.
That's amazing, man. I mean, to kind of be this intergenerational kind of, high standard of, high performance mental coaches means to me. But yeah, I mean, like just more on Kai, because I gotta say, like I was so impressed with the last few fights where he found himself in these deep waters. Like this is where everybody was edge of the seat kind of stuff. Where it's like, oh my god, man, like he's in the vice grip in there, and he maintained his cool to. Yes,
well, there's three states that I teach, right?
Yeah.
So when you get in the zone, there's three states. The foundation is calm, right? Because ultimately any sport, to a certain point, it's about the ability to deploy good decision-making and choices, right? Now, each into their own in the sense, for instance, there's a massive difference between an MMA fighter and a golfer. And one of the key, they each have in themselves their own challenges. You could be in a choke and you better stay calm. Well, then the rest of and the body's going, are you fucking serious? We're going to die, right? And you're saying, no, calm down, it's all good, I got this. And with a golfer, you hit a ball and it's in the shit, you've got to walk 300 meters, and that's plenty of time to really contaminate yourself confidence, you know what I mean? So they all present their own challenges. So the first thing is calm. When you're calm, you make good decisions. All right. The next, it's so interesting, it's happy. When you're happy, and there's that physiology of being happy, it's very hard to access negative self-talk and negative feelings when you're in a positive state, right? The last is the alter ego or the Superman. And I sometimes use it. So a little example is Israel Adesanya goes to an event as Israel Adesanya. but what comes out into that is the style bender. Now, if you had to choose between a mortal and a style bender, who are you going to choose to fucking fight? I'm taking that mortal any day, because the style bender will fuck you up, right? So Izzy becomes something more than all his parts. And he is a prime example of someone who really embraces that. You know, he's just blossomed. But we certainly have to appreciate that man has done a lot of fucking hard work to get where he is, you know, and I'm fucking proud of him. I'm proud of all my athletes. I know that the work and the effort and the sacrifices that they make, but if you want to seek greatness, you have to be prepared to make those sacrifices. It's not going to be handed to you. And I think in order to really appreciate it, that pain is part of that fulfillment, in the sense that you can appreciate it more because of what you've been through, you know. Pain means new life, man.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a good analogy would be somebody running the 10Ks versus somebody being driven the 10Ks. You know, both of you will end up at the same point.
Yeah.
But, you know, the guy that ran there is just going to feel that sense of relief.
And you know, I'm the guy in the car, but I'm encouraging you. I'm not fucking designed for running, mate. You know, and I you know, it's interesting because I work with a lot of high performance athletes in Olympic level, and I've really enjoyed that. It's interesting when you have someone come and see you that's been challenging whether or not they've got what it takes. And the evidence is there that sort of reinforces the fact that perhaps they haven't got it. Then they come and have some sessions with me, and then they go on the track and they start hitting PBs that they've never hit before. It's pretty fucking cool, man, because then that initial belief system that they have has been challenged, and then it can be replaced with something more empowering.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it all the time, but majority of the time.
Yeah, but I mean, it's similar to your example where
absolutely.
It's just it's written off. It's impossible as far as
we're really good at convincing ourselves that we can't, eh?
Yeah,
and it's sort of like, nah, fuck that, man. You know, you can buy into the bullshit, and look, it can be challenging because predominantly most of the feedback you're getting is, you know, no, I don't think so. The evidence is there saying, yeah, you're fucking right, you won't. And something inside of you've got to go, no, fuck this. I believe in me, you know, I'm going to make a fucking decision. I mean, if I had surrendered to that narrative, I don't know, maybe I would have been production manager of a printing company, but I'd been fucking miserable. I'd probably have a drinking problem, God knows what other fucking psychological issues, because I'd be dead inside. I mean, you've got to find that passion. I mean, for me, you know, it's interesting. This isn't work. This is having a conversation with someone I care about. You know, I fucking love winning too. And I live that through my athletes. Seeing Izzy win, that was so fucking special. And all my boys, I mean, that fight with Kai. I mean, you know, you think about those last couple of fights, Kite and Brad. Mm-hmm. Fuck, those guys are mentally so strong. They are amazing what these athletes do. But then again, that's applied throughout the whole spectrum of my athletes. You know, these golfers have to be strong mentally too, because it's too easy to give in. You know, it's challenging. And the thing about all sports is that they all present their own challenges. You know, it's interesting. I constantly get people say, well, you know, my sport's a little bit more challenging than anything else. I'm going, get over yourself. They're all equally challenging, just in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, of course, it's, you know, you have your physical sports, you have like the less physical but more kind of long game. I mean, it's kind of like comparing golf and MMA. Yeah. Two different things, but, you know, the mentality around is the same. Yeah. In terms of your work with corporates, I mean, I suppose I'm envisioning a slightly different dynamic as opposed to athletes because of I suppose, the leadership aspect. With,
Yep.
with athletes, you can kind of focus on the individual more.
Yep.
Whereas with corporates, I feel like, unless you're kind of, some super one-man band, quite often there's going to be other kind of external parties that aren't necessarily against you. So they're with you, but at the same time, they don't always help.
How do you build a team? How do you build that team culture? How do you support? What does leadership mean? And how do I know I'm a good leader? And what does that mean? And there's a lot of many questions, and there are some fundamentals, but again, to a certain point, it's interesting how each individual come in with their own perception of the challenge, and it could be, how do I inspire my sales team? How do I support them a little bit more? What are the skills that they need to develop? What resources do I need to provide for them? Whatever. How do I make this thing profitable? Because that's the bottom line too. By definition, if it's not making profit, it's not really a business, is it? So you adapt accordingly. Whether it's a CEO of a business looking at leadership, looking at how he can make, or perhaps a lot of the leaders, it still comes back down to building a strong self-image. Sometimes leadership, by definition, I suppose, to a certain point, leadership is about making a good decision. And ideally, that's what you're paid for, is to make good decisions. But sometimes it also comes down to the simplicity of the fact that you have to make a fucking decision. And decisions is part of your role and part of the challenges that you have. And it's ensuring that you've made those decisions from the proper place. Navigating your way through the challenges of business. So sometimes it's an emotion, it's sort of playing that role of they come in, they have a problem, and it's not that I provide the answers to that. I'm not a business consultant. But I can certainly help the questioning process to help them perhaps get more of clarity of probably the questions they can ask to get better outcomes and to allow them to sort of navigate through the challenges of it.
So basically, that's kind of what I gathered from that, is that it's the navigation process.
Yeah, and it's conversational. It's sort of, how you start with a bit of a conversation, and then an issue will come up, and we'll look at it and go, okay, how do we deal with this? You know what I mean? And I think it's one of those things where, as a leader, they're ideally working there and supporting their staff. But, who motivates the motivator? And they need that support too to become a better leader and a better person. They go through, the human beings, man.
Yeah. In terms of personalities, do you find that personalities make a lot of difference? You have your extroverted, introverted, you have, you have stubborn people, you have more easygoing people. So, it's just, there's a whole spectrum of people and different personalities. And as far as I'm concerned, style bender is one, and then you'll have somebody a bit.
Kai's the complete opposite, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kai's introverted, quiet.
Exactly.
Style bender is very extroverted. Brad Riddell is very quiet.
Yeah.
And the personality doesn't necessarily have any bearing on the fact that they're going to be a champion or not. I think if we do look at any sort of personality profiling, which I have done many over the years, utilising different tools. Probably the most popular is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. You're probably used to that.
Yeah.
And for me, it's interesting. I get a lot of, for instance, kids that are looking at transition to university that have got a sports scholarship. They're into golf, basketball, baseball, whatever. But they know that, if I'm going to go to university, I want to get an education. But I got no fucking idea. And I've always encouraged people to do what they are. If you look at my profile, I'm exactly in the industry I should be, based on my personality. And so you get a lot of people that are unhappy, and then I'll sit down and have a chat, and we'll say, well, let's do your profile. Have you done your profile? No, I've never done it. Oh, yeah, well, your profile says that you're better off with systems than you are with people, and you're in a role that probably doesn't quite suit your personality. And it can help people at least stimulate dialogue and thought and go, yeah, maybe that's interesting. People are always fascinated about themselves, aren't they? We love it. I do it with the kids. I'll run something a little bit easier, although it's more applicable to adults, and that's psychogeometrics. And just on the shapes, you can sort of identify, personalities and extract information from that. It's really interesting. Have you never done it?
No, I haven't.
Well, it's ideally I usually run it with a whiteboard and you can see the shapes. But if you think about, we'll run it. If you had a circle, a triangle, a square, a rectangle, and a squiggle, of those shapes, what would be the most important shape for you? What that you relate to of all those shapes? Circle, a square, a rectangle, a triangle, and a squiggle.
Well, just kind of intuitively, I'm pulled towards a triangle.
Triangle,
Yeah.
okay. So the triangle in itself indicates that you've got very strong values and possibly a very leadership orientated. Probably not someone who would take direction too well and would rather be the one giving directions. Stubborn. Would you say that's a pretty good start?
Yeah, I mean, my level of stubbornness is probably not as bad as as it could be, but as far as
What was the second shape?
rectangle,
Really?
yeah.
Now that is interesting. And the reason why is that the rectangle generally sits in the last two shapes in the preference. If it's up further than that, it can actually indicate that you're going through some sort of transition or change.
Well, which I kind of am at the moment, yeah.
Interesting, eh?
Yeah.
Put it this way, and it's interesting. I mean, I don't say that it's science per se, but I remember running a seminar, and I ran this because it's a great little way to open up the dialogue. Oh, I'm a circle and I'm a square, and you go, oh God, you are. But I had a situation where this popped up, and it was the second shape, and I talked to the boss and said, hey, listen, just keep an eye on this guy, because I think, have you seen any changes in his behaviour and attitude lately? And he goes, what makes you say that? And it's just something, I'm not going to say, oh, I saw a rectangle on it, fucking hell, how convincing is that, No, just in general, just asking. And he goes, yeah, we noticed he's been not as productive and a little bit quiet. I said, well, it might be worth getting in the office, have a conversation with him. So he did. And I said, well, let me know how it goes, mate. He goes, hey, apparently this guy's really unhappy with the role that he's in, and he's looking for a change, which we've accommodated him for, and he's so much happier. His personality's changed dramatically. So was that from the fact that the rectangle was there? Possibly. It was interesting. It's interesting.
It is interesting how these things kind of connect. But, going back to, again, like the comparison of, say, Stylebender and Kai, I mean, both are equally awesome at what they do. Very different personalities, though.
Yep.
Is there, do you find that the approach is slightly different to kind of, to how you help them navigate these things?
I mean, there are individuals at the end of the day, so they're going to have different belief systems. They're going to have different challenges, but what you got to appreciate is, regardless of what some of those things are, the fundamentals are there. How do I get into that peak state? How do I stay consistent? How do I get to a place where, in the most uncomfortable situations, I can make good decisions? And then from there, it can expand out into all sorts of area, whether it's future thinking about how retirement. You know, you have to prepare these guys for a future, and 9 times out of 10 they're very switched on. I mean, they're all having families now. I mean, Brad's got a beautiful little girl. Kai's just had a bub. They're becoming dads now, and it's pretty cool watching that transition too, and seeing how that can actually impact on where their values are, where their preferences and priorities are, and helping them navigate through that as well sometimes can be quite important for the role that I play, in the conversations.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you say that, because I personally have seen that change in some of these guys too, because like if you've been following them for as long as I have, you've seen them kind of come out as just young dudes in here to do their thing, and then families start happening, babies start happening, and priorities change, and you just come in like you're not just there to have fun anymore. You're there to make something happen.
Well, I mean, obviously there's a certain level of accountability and transition. I mean, the key word that I have that I talk about with these boys, the key word here is not fighter, it's professional. You have to learn how to play and behave as a professional. It's all hunky-dory when you're just going through the motions, and when you're first starting out, it's probably not that important. But then you're going to get to a point where you need to bankroll and maximize. I mean, you think, you talk to Izzy and Blood Diamond, Brad, and these guys were the stories, the shit they went through. Traveling through dodgy places in China to get a fight. I mean, these guys deserve every bit of the success because of the shit that they've been through. And I sort of lost my train of thought there for a minute. I was where was I going with this? So that sort of conditioned them to a certain point, but then they were fighting for peanuts. They were making ends meet. And the whole purpose of this, when you turn pro, is ultimately, I think, to a certain point, to get a fucking payoff.
Yeah.
And pay back for 10, 15, 20 years of bullshit and sacrifice. And I do get irate with people going, they've got all this fucking money. Oh, mate, you have no idea. And nor do you have possibly the conviction to go through what these guys went through. They deserve every fucking cent they earn. And that's a real sense of satisfaction. Sitting there with Kai, and he was talking about, buying a home. What a buzz. He's bought a home for him and his family. That was significant for him. Now, most of us are going, oh yeah, he had a really good fight. That was awesome. Now for him, that's a job. Yes, he's proud of himself. But building that home, and having his family in it, that's pretty special. Izzy, the first thing he did, and went and brought something for his mum and dad. Because he knew the fucking sacrifices they made for him to have this opportunity to live here in this country. And I think that's one of the things I really respected and I loved about Izzy's Halberg Award speech. And he said, when I win, we all win. And I wish people would actually fucking get that. They're very quick to pull people down off there. And I would say, you have no right to make that judgment until you get to know the man and know his story. Then you might just change your fucking mind, eh?
It's interesting you bring up that speech. It did kind of generate a lot of controversy. And I think it's, at that point, it brings to mind the kind of culturally specific things in these aspects of your work, you know. So talking about specifically the New Zealand culture and the whole tall poppy thing. I mean, we've spoken about it a million times. Just about every platform. Anybody who's ever done anything that's kind of made them stand out, there's always been that issue, whether they had to kind of tell people to cut the bullshit, or the people were just kind of coming after them for saying, and you know, it happens with Izzy all the time, if anything. You know, like you see it on social media, you see it on the news. There's just always someone telling, you know, this guy.
We just saw Tyson getting the shit because he, you know, you hear about Tyson. Smack that guy in the face
again. Because somebody thought that they kind of, you know, deserved something from him, and you know. But and when you see the story, you look at it, it's just like, well, the guy deserved it. I don't know how else to put it. Like, you can attach any kind of legal aspects to it and call it assault and everything, but I'm like, in every kind of human understanding,
absolutely,
what had happened, you know, what do you do? Do you call someone to tell them to leave him alone?
I mean, could you? I think we're sort of going somewhere where it's just it. Even online today, everyone's got an opinion, and I know for me, interesting as he says, you know, it's all fucking noise, and he's so right. You know, even I occasionally post something, and then I start getting this attack about this and that, and for me, it's just noise. And I think the power's in the finger, mate. You just go delete. I'm fucking not interested in debating. You know what I mean? Because I know where my intentions come from, and you know. Not everyone's going to like what I say. I get that. But I'm really not interested in getting involved in any sort of discourse about that. You know, I know fundamentally for me, the important thing for me is I know who I am, and I know where my intentions are. And I get a real kick, and the basic philosophy for me is my job is to help you achieve your dreams.
And I mean, kind of in its own way, it answers my question around these, you know, these cultural aspects, you know, such as his speech.
Yep.
Yeah, you know, it's a lot. It attracted a lot of opinions. It attracted a lot of feedback from you know, from the media, from just about everyone, and. Yeah, how he handled that. How he handled that. He handled it with. He handled it very calmly in that sense.
Yeah, and we also have to appreciate it's not like these guys are trained in media. Fundamentally, they're a fighter. I mean, I you know, you think about it. You know, if someone makes a comment, now there's a certain process and protocol online, or ideally on how you should, you know, undertake a discourse or a conversation. But most people tend to flaunt that. And you can understand, you know, for a lot of these guys, as they've evolved, suddenly you have 2,000, then you got 5,000, then you got 500,000 followers. That's a lot of noise. Fundamentally, he's not trained in this sort of thing. He's a fighter. And when you get to know the guy, you know that he's not out there to hurt people in the sense of when he's in the ring, he's going to knock you the fuck out. But it's not his nature to be nasty, to be narcissistic, to hurt people. You know, I respect you know, he went back and he's acknowledged every single fucking person that helped him on that journey. The first, you know, the family that helped him when he came over with mum and dad as a refugee, and that story. How wonderful is that? And isn't it interesting? We choose to focus on what we want to focus on, and it was a comment that he's made that we see it through that filter. And from there we just expand on things, and it's a little bit sad.
In terms of, I mean, obviously I can see how you would work with him around the practical aspect of what he does. Have you had to do any work with him around that kind of media aspect? Obviously,
no.
you're not a media coach or anything that.
No.
But
and I
how
think,
you handle that noise.
Correct. And I think we need to set the platform firstly, though. I mean, I started working with Izzy in 2016 to about 2018. So he was on that journey, like I said, my job is to make myself redundant. We worked for about 2 years on and off. And a lot of this happened a little bit later. So he, like I said, the foundation was already there. I remember the first time he came in the office, and one thing I knew for sure is he's a very intellectual. He's a very, very smart man. But his attitude towards learning is like a kid in a lolly store, you know what I mean? He was so eager. And I get there with a lot of the guys. You still get some clients come in there and they sit there and going, right, what are we doing? That can be frustrating, but it's part of the people. They need to learn how. And one of the things that I talk about is part of the coaching sessions is me teaching you how to get the best out of me. Don't come in here. Ideally, I want an action reflection process. Go away and reflect. Think about a few things. Bring an agenda. Don't just sit there. I got to say, majority of the athletes that I have come in with this wonderful, I'm interested in this, or some curious thing, and that makes my job so much easier and fulfilling and exciting. I love that, and I get a lot of it, and it's great.
Because it's interesting the way, I've had very limited interactions with Izzy, but nonetheless I had a couple just by being in the fight scene, and it is something that I've really noticed as well. It's that his kind of personal persona, so to speak, is quite a bit different to the public persona. And I can understand why. Obviously, the public persona, this is the businessman in me. It has to be marketable. You have to put on a show and entertain and do all of that.
You got to sell fights, man.
Exactly. But as far as any kind of personal interaction that I've ever had with him, he's always been like extremely polite. He's
a gentleman.
Yeah,
they all are. In my dealings with most of these guys, and I'm sure I'm very excited to work with two other, quite a few, but I've got Junior Farr and Hemi, both those guys can bang, mate. I'm really excited about these two as well. Having said that, we've got female fighters that are just absolutely freaks. I'm really excited about females fighting. I just think they are. It's about fucking time they got the recognition for what they work so hard for. And I like to think that there's some opportunities for these girls to get some pay parity too. You know what I mean? I think it's great. And I think it's good for the sport, and I think it's good for all of us. So I'm excited about the fight scene in this country, and you got to appreciate it. I'm not saying that I'm the guru and all that shit. You know what I mean? I work with a handful of fighters, but based on my interaction with those fighters, their coaches, and the organisations that they work with, I can see there's a lot of work that goes into that, and that I really respect. There's something about work ethic, Peach Boxing are creating something great there. Obviously City Kickbox is producing an environment there where they're producing champions. And I'd like to see, I was a little frustrated when, City Kickboxing wasn't really recognised for an achievement, and what they've produced. And you think about what they've produced in the last sort of 5 years, an All Black team will be more than happy with those sorts of results. They're producing quality athletes. Doug and Eugene have got to take a lot of credit for that. Those two guys are very sharp. They know their strengths and their weaknesses, but fuck, man, what they've done is outstanding. It's exciting. I'm excited about. Well, I mean, all I know is I'm never going to be out of business, mate. It's really cool. I look forward to, I have this new generation of athletes coming through, and I'm very excited, mate.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you mentioned female fighters. From what I saw, you've been working with Baby Nansen.
Yeah, Baby, and a few other fighters as well.
Yeah.
Another lovely family. Her and her husband Sam. They do a lot of work. I think it's Smack Gym out in Manurewa.
Yeah.
And again, they're putting a lot of work. I mean, these guys put a lot of work back into the community, and these kids are coming in here, getting off the streets and learning how to do something positive. And and part of that is teaching them discipline through martial arts. It is something that needs to be encouraged. And hats off to them, man.
Yeah, and I mean, like they're actually, I think they're. I agree with you. I do think that female fighters are very underrated in the industry.
Yeah.
And speaking of Baby Nansen, one of our girls, Troy Garton, who.
Yeah, I know Troy. Yeah, I know Troy.
Yeah, so she's been working with her as well.
Yeah.
And, I've witnessed these things firsthand myself as to how hard these girls work. I've done some training with. I've helped her with her conditioning and all that.
Yep.
So you really get to appreciate just how much goes into it. And as far as genders go, there's really not. Well, there's no difference.
I wouldn't want to be hit by Baby.
No.
Yeah, seriously, or kicked. And you're absolutely right, mate. I think it's really exciting. What are we? And when you think about it across that whole fighting spectrum, what is this country capable of creating? Well, I think we've got I think we're going to see a lot of excitement happening, because I think what you got to appreciate. I think a lot of credit for the UFC boys, without a doubt, probably goes to Dan. And I'm very privileged to be working with Dan as well. I've worked with all of these guys at some level. And it just takes one person to... Interesting enough, it's a bit like, they talked about the 4-minute mile, they said it was impossible. And Roger Bannister broke that. Now, what was interesting for many... since the beginning of time, no man has ever done that. But within a calendar year, 4 or 5 others had done the same. And that, I think, to a certain point, Dan, Izzy, have gone, this is what we're capable of doing. Now, that is doable because I eat with that guy, I train with that guy, I know his strengths and weaknesses.
You spar with the guy. You get hit by that guy. And that's when you're like, okay.
So this is the best in the world. Fuck, that gives them hope.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so what you start to create is this high-performance environment that presents evidence that, if I'm duplicating and managing myself similar to what Izzy's doing, then it's certainly to a certain point presents a probability that is achievable. Now, when you start believing that, and then you throw a whole lot of people in that environment, fuck, the vibe there is freaking electric, man. Yeah. It's really fucking cool, hey? I love being around that. I love that energy, whether it's working with teams or individuals or whatever. But that's the buzz that I get. I'd seeing people achieve is the biggest buzz that I get, and that's part of my role. I'm not in the limelight. My job is to put them in the limelight, and that's the buzz that I get. I'm pathetic, mate. I think my wife had a film of me watching Kai. And I'm fucking getting my phone out going, I'm so excited for the guy. I'm pathetic, you know what I mean? I'll fucking cry. I'm an emotional wreck. And here I am teaching mental performance, But I'm just so engaged in that moments. And for all my athletes, the satisfaction when you have... I have a young lady who's made the Commonwealth team, and she has been through some shit and challenge, and so working through all that, and that moment that where she recently in Australia in the track champs over there, and she nailed 3 PBs. Wow. You know, it's like fuck, and from that they go, I believe now. I know, and that builds that momentum. And once you've got momentum with a client, fucking watch out. You know what I mean? That can take a little bit of a push or a pull or whatever. But when you start nurturing that and you start building that momentum, fuck that. It's when I get excited because they realised, excuse me, that it is possible. You know, there are no limitations, or even though there's limitations and challenges, I have a different attitude the way I approach it. That's fucking exciting, you know. You set them free from doubt, you know, and they become truly fearless. And that's when the magic happens, man. And that's that satisfaction. I mean, you can appreciate how many times a week I'm winning.
I can imagine.
It's fucking cool, you know?
You're sitting here just radiating energy right now.
Mate, honestly, it's just, fuck, life's great. It really is, mate. And there is something wonderful in understanding that the only true way to wealth is to help others get what they want. And that's something I've always believed in. You know, if I can help you and others achieve, I'm winning. That's what Izzy said. When I'm winning, you're winning. I'm setting a platform. I'm telling people, the youth of this country that are into UFC, it's possible. Don't fucking pull me down because of that. You should be building me up so I can bring others up with me. So, you know, we've still got a long way to go. But, hey, listen, I think let's just say we're on the right track.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, man. I really enjoyed talking to you about this and, like, you know, just feeding off that energy.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up,
Yep.
Can you say something to our viewers?
Yep.
And just, you know, to all the people right now that may have something they want to do, they're passionate about it, they want to push through it.
Yep.
You've kind of, you know, you've gone over your experiences,
Yeah.
you've gone over a certain, you know, technique of, you know, calm, happiness, and Superman.
Yeah.
Can you wrap it up for us, please?
If I was going to wrap it up, I think I'm going to wrap it up with one word. Ooh. And that word is permission. Give yourself permission to be brilliant. Give yourself permission to be world class. Give yourself permission, and looking at whatever that negative or that weakness is, you know, give yourself permission to conquer it, man. How does that work?
No,
Pretty
that's
good?
amazing.
You like that?
Yeah, I like
Okay.
that. I really appreciate you coming through
Mate,
tonight.
That was my absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, man. It was great.
No, I know our listeners will too.
Okay, bro.
Awesome. One time for your mind.
Thank you, man. See you guys.